We want to use the TI-84 calculator to graph this equation, y equals x cubed minus 3x squared minus 13. We're going to do this first with the standard viewing window, and then we're going to alter the viewing window and look at which one gives us a better view. And then we're going to use the calculator to calculate the zeros of this graph. So I'm going to start just by turning the calculator on and going to y equals. And then in y equals, if you have something in here right now, you'll just want to clear it out so that we can have a clean slate. And we're going to type in this x cubed minus 3x squared minus 13. So your variable button is in the top left corner, diagonal from the second button. So this is my x button. And then I'm going to put into the third power. There is a cubed button. If you go to math, this third option will let you cube it. But you might later want to raise something to like the fourth, fifth, 10th power, something like that. So what I actually do instead of doing that, so back in my y equals screen, if I want to do x to the third, I'm just going to use the caret button. And so that caret symbol will let me raise it to any power. And if you have a newer model calculator, you should have done what mine did and actually make it smaller and up here in the top, like to the top and to the right of that X. And I'm just going to type in a 3. But then if yours actually looks like an exponent like this, then you're going to have to arrow to the right to get out of that exponent. So then I'm going to type in minus 3. Again, I'm going to use my X button or my variable button. And then this time I want to square it. There is a square button, or again, you could just use the caret symbol and type in a 2. And then arrow to the right to get out of the exponent. And then minus 13. All right, so there's my equation in y equals. And then what I want to do now is I want to graph this. Most likely your calculator defaults to the standard viewing window, which is an x minimum of -10 to a maximum x value of +10, and then a y min of -10 and a y max of +10. But if you've used the calculator previously and you've changed the window, it may not be. So it's just good to check it. So if you go to window, you just want to check that your x min is -10, your x max is +10, y min is -10, and y max is +10. And then I'm going to hit graph and just see what this graph looks like. So I am seeing the graph. But I'm not seeing a whole lot of detail, but this may be okay. So then we want to change this a little bit. So they suggest changing this to a viewing window of -10 to 10 on the X. So we're not changing the X min or X max, but then they're suggesting changing the Y min to -25. So I'm going to go back to window and I'm going to change just the Y min value to negative. Make sure you don't type in a minus, but you actually use the negative button. -25, and then hit graph again and see, yeah, that's definitely a much better picture here. So in terms of which window gives the better view, definitely this illustrates the importance of playing around with your window. So the second window is much better in this case. All right, so then I want to use the graphing calculator to calculate a zero. So if you're asked to find a root or a zero or an x-intercept, those are all the same thing. So a zero is just an x-intercept, or where does my graph cross the x-axis. And just by looking at this graph, I have a pretty good idea. It looks like it's crossing the x-axis at 4, so that would be my guess. But it may not be 4. It could be like 4.1 or 3.9 or something really close to 4, but not exactly 4. So I'm going to get the graphing calculator to calculate this exactly. So while I'm on this graph screen, I'm going to need to go to Calc. Now, Calc is not on a button itself, but it's above the button. And your colors may be different, but in my case, it's blue, right? So it's blue and it's above the trace button. So anytime you want to access something that's above that button, you're going to have to hit that same colored button or the second button. So if I want to go to Calc, I actually have to hit the second button and then hit this button to get me, instead of going to trace, I want to get to Calc. And then I want to calculate a zero or an x-intercept. So I'm going to choose that second option. You can either arrow down and hit enter, or you can actually type in number 2 and that will work. And then it takes me back to my graph and it's asking me for some information here. So the first thing it's asking me for, it's asking me for a left bound, which means it wants me to be someplace to the left of where this graph is intersecting this x-axis. And again, it looks like it's at 4, but we're going to figure out if it's exactly at 4 or not. And so technically right now I am to the left of that. Usually I move a little bit closer. So the up and down keys won't work, but the left and right, you can move left and right along your graph. So I want to just move kind of close, but I still want to be someplace to the left of where I'm crossing the x-axis. So I might just stay about here. That seems good. And I'm going to hit enter. And then it now is asking me for a right bound. So I need to move someplace to the right of where it crosses the x-axis. So here's my x-intercept. So just here's where I'm going to go, just anywhere really to the right, but not too far away. And I'll hit enter. And then the last thing it's going to ask you for is it's going to ask you for a guess, or basically it wants you to get as close as you can to where it actually intersects the x-axis. So here or here, that's about as close as I'm getting. So either of those should be fine. And then I'm going to hit enter. And so it calculated it, and actually it's not 4, it's actually 3 point, if I round it, that would be 3.87. So it was close to 4, but not exactly. So I'll say approximately equal to 3.87.